Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. Just before the break, we were talking about Qazman, and this man who went and killed bravely 8 of the polytheists. But then he killed himself and ended up his life to be in hell. He told his people that he did not come to fight for the sake of Allah. He came only to fight because of his feelings towards his people and his need to defend his brothers. And this teaches us that the most thing that a Muslim fears is how his life is going to end. Which means that there's a hadith, and it's reported by or narrated by Abdullah bin Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, that the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam, that a man can perform what seems to the people as good deeds for 60 years. And just before he dies, there is nothing between him and entering paradise except,
arm's length.
Yes. And just before he dies, he does something that entitles him to enter hell, and he dies and he goes to hell. Therefore, we fear a lot this moment that Allah Azza wa Jal would make us die in. And we always pray that Allah Azza wa Jal concludes our deeds with something that is good. Because if your life ends in doing something that is good, then you are inevitably going to paradise. And vice versa. If it concludes in something that is bad, this means that you have something bad waiting for you, and God forbids.
Do we learn from that event as well that suicide killing, that if a person kill himself or blow up himself or do anything, even if in sake of the religion, that he's in hell as well, or this is like something forbidden Islamically?
Well, again, this is an issue of dispute among scholars. A group of scholars say that this is acceptable because you're inflicting more harm in the enemy lines than yourself. And other scholars, and this I highly believe and recommend, they think that no, detonating a bomb to kill yourself, though you're killing others, this is considered to be suicide. And we cannot simply judge others without being in their circumstances. So it is up to their scholars in the occupied lands, the real scholars, to give the true and authentic verdict depending on the circumstances and the situation where they live in. But generally speaking, no. Suicide bombing is not acceptable. Discriminate killing is by no means acceptable. And this has nothing to do with, as we mentioned earlier, charging into the army or to the enemy lines, fighting them until they kill you. This is different than you actually blowing yourself up or killing yourself.
Was he the only companion that killed himself, Qasama?
This what appears. Qazman, it appears that he's the only one who committed suicide. And whether he is the same man or not, but this is what was reported to us, that a man fought bravely at the side of the Prophet ﷺ and then ended his life with his own hands.
Shaikh, was that not enough to lose him his deeds just because of the intention?
Of course, that was enough by itself. But committing suicide also, the punishment for that is very severe. And some say that he will be punished in hell forever. But the authentic opinion is that if someone kills himself, it's a major sin. He will be punished in hell, but eventually he will go to paradise. The Prophet tells us, ﷺ, and the hadith was reported in Muslim, that whoever kills himself with a weapon or with a substance or with an item, he will be punished till the day of judgment with the same item. So if he drank poison, he will keep on drinking poison in the barzakh. If he threw himself from a mountain or from a high place, he will be punished with the same punishment finding and suffering the same pain, and then doing it over and over and over again till Allah Azza wa Jal knows when. And likewise, if someone stabs himself, he will be stabbing himself till the day of judgment, and then it's hellfire. May Allah protect us. Yes.
And this is taking place in the grave?
Yes, yes, because as we know, we have three worlds. This world we're living in, and then there's the hereafter, which is infinity, and there's a transitional world in between, and that's from the death of the person until he's resurrected. And Allah knows how long that is. And in this world, the world of barzakh, this transitional world, it depends on the person's deeds. If his deeds were good in the first world, he'll be enjoying winds and blows from paradise. And if his deeds were not as good, he will be suffering from the winds of hellfire until the day of judgment. The Prophet ﷺ instructed the companions to collect those who died at the side of Allah, the martyrs, and to bury them. And 70 graves to be buried is not an easy task, especially when those who are digging the graves are wounded themselves. No one was safe. Even the Prophet ﷺ was wounded himself and was suffering from his leg and from the wound in his head and his cheek and his teeth.
Shoulder.
Yes, and his shoulder. So, because of that, the Prophet ﷺ instructed them to dig graves and to put 2 or 3 in the same grave. And he instructed them to put first those who have Quran more. So, whenever he was brought with 2 or 3 of the men, he instructed them that whoever recited Quran more than the other, who learnt it by heart more, to be advanced in the grave. Were they washed? No. Were they dressed with, or wrapped with kafan, what we call in Arabic kafan, the white clothes? No. Did the Prophet ﷺ pray on them? Again, no. Funeral prayer is a form of intercession. You're praying the funeral prayer and the dead body is in front of you, asking Allah that you may intercede for this dead person, that his sins would be forgiven and that he would be admitted to Jannah. The martyrs, they intercede for the living. As we said, as we're told in the hadith, that whenever a person is a martyr, he intercedes for 70 of his family. And he's given 72 brides from Jannah. And with the first flow of blood, Allah will forgive all of his sins. And he will not be punished in his grave, and he will not be terrorized, or he will not fear on the day of resurrection. All of these are given to a martyr. So the Prophet ﷺ had them buried. They came to the corpse of Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. When he saw him, he was so sad that he cried, the Prophet ﷺ. Hamza was his uncle and was his brother from suckling also. They were all fed by one slave of Abi Lahab. Her name was Thuwayba. And also Abu Salama, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ. They were all brothers because they had their milk from the same woman. He was very sad and was very touched emotionally, seeing his uncle with his nose and ears cut, with his guts coming out. They mutilated his body and came in his sister Safiya, the mother of Az-Zubair ibn al-Awwam. The Prophet's aunt came to see her brother. And the Prophet ﷺ sent her son, Az-Zubair, and told him, keep her away. I don't want her to see her brother. And she was a very, very tough and strong woman. And she looked at her son with a way that the son himself, who was one of the bravest soldiers of Islam, could not do anything about it. And he told him, go to the Prophet and ask him for permission to come, because I want to see what they did to my brother. If he's dead, he's dead. He's a martyr. But I want to see him. And the Prophet ﷺ allowed her to come. She stood by her brother's corpse and prayed for him, that Allah Azza wa Jal would have mercy on him, and she left. Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib was a very tall man, very strong. They could not find enough clothes to wrap him with. So the clothes that he was wearing, when they covered his head, they could see his feet. And when they covered his feet, his head would appear. And the same thing happened with Mus'ab ibn Umair. May Allah be pleased with him. One of the richest youth of Mecca at the time. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, may Allah be pleased with him, reports, and this took time about 7 or 8 years later. He was fasting on a Monday, and they brought him food so that he would break his fast. Imagine fasting after 16, 17 hours. And they brought him food to break his fast. And as he saw the food, he said, Mus'ab ibn Umair, who was much, much better than I was, we could not find clothes to cover him before burial. And all what I see and all what I feel, that Allah Azza wa Jal has granted us our blessings in this world, and I'm afraid that we may be deprived of getting it on the day or in the hereafter. And he rejected the food and went on crying. Look at the love and appreciation for those who died on the battle of Uhud. The Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said to his companions, I wished I was amongst the dead on the hills, or on the foot of the hill of Uhud. He himself wished that, because he knew about the great reward of those who die at the side of Allah the Almighty. I believe that we have to stop here, but I promise you, inshallah, when we meet next time, that we will continue to talk about what happened after the battle of Uhud. And until then, fi amanillah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.